Hi, I'm Tina Responti. I'm here with three of my colleagues, people that I deeply admire, and I'm fortunate to also call friend. I started with a group of wonderful people, everybody on this call and others, a conference a few years ago that we called Building Compassionate Learning Communities. And I'm also a teacher at Mount Lebanon High School. And I'm really excited to talk with these wonderful, beautiful souls tonight about the topic of compassion.
Hi, I'm Shannon Wanlist, and I am from the University of Pittsburgh. I am a mother, an educator, former Head Start teacher where my passion still lies all the time. And I'm excited to be a part of this call too and talk about compassion, something that's really coming up now more than ever.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle King. I'm a longtime middle school teacher. That's actually where Tina and I met. And that is actually where I learned compassion deeply. In the last couple of years, I've left the classroom to really practice compassion in all the places that I go. And I work currently as a learning instigator, love activist, and local troublemaker.
Hi, I'm Leah Northrup. I am also a teacher and educator. I teach yoga and mindfulness at the University of Pittsburgh to kindergarten to 8th graders. So yes, I also have learned compassion in that way. I've been thinking a lot about compassion and self-compassion during this time of, I was going to say lockdown because maybe that's what it feels like a little bit. It feels like a little stay in lockdown, hunker down, everybody in. And so I hope that we get to talk about that today, as well as some other ways that we're thinking about compassion. And so to start us off, I was hoping to introduce maybe some of you to a new kind of breathing technique. This is something that both Tina and I learned on a retreat with the Holistic Life Foundation. They're really awesome guys out of Baltimore, Andreas, Ottman, and Ali. And we learned tons of cool techniques, but this one's called the stress breath. And I really liked it. I found that my kids at school really liked it, and we thought we could try it together. So it's really, we'll do 10 reps, but it is a breath in through your nose. And then while you're holding your breath, you drop your chin down towards your chest. And then very slowly, maybe to the count of 5, breathe out. So that's 1 repetition. All right, you got it? We'll do 9 more. You breathe in through your nose. Hold your breath for a moment, drop your chin down, and breathe out very slowly again through your nose. Breathe in again. Drop your chin. Breathe out slowly through your nose. Inhale. Slowly exhale. Breathing in. Drop your chin. And slowly breathe out. Inhaling. Exhaling. Inhaling. And exhaling. Last 2, taking a little bit bigger this time. Breathe in through your nose. Drop your chin and maybe breathe out a little bit more slowly as you lift your chin up. Last one, breathe in. Drop your chin and breathe out. And let your eyes flutter open if they are closed. A really nice way to settle things out when you feel the energy going up, up, up. It's also a great way to show yourself some compassion. So enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you, Leah.
Yeah.
And now I've forgotten why we're here. I'm so relaxed. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we actually know why we're here. And we're here to talk about compassion and why we believe that compassion is actually a practice for these times. And perhaps that's one thing that we can learn from the virus, are what are the new practices to retain our own humanity and see the humanity in others. So I'm going to open up this discussion to us to talk about compassion, what we believe it is, and how we see it as a practice for these times. Anything else that comes up?
Thanks, Michelle. I thought it would be interesting just to hear what people think of when they think of compassion, you know, like how they see it or feel it or notice it.
Mm-hmm. So I was thinking, well, I think back to how I talk about the differences, right? This is something we've talked about before, Tina, and different programming that we've led, the sympathy, empathy, and compassion, and what takes compassion to a different level than sympathy and empathy, right? How compassion is a verb, right? I think we talk about that, how we're moving something, we're changing something, we're making a difference with an action. Compassion is an action.
Yeah, I think I would add to that, Leah, thanks. Just like noticing the suffering that's occurring and wanting to maybe do something, you know, to relieve that suffering. So when you say, you know, it is an action or a verb, to me, it's a noticing of something that's occurring as well as a doing.
I find these days it feels like more often than before, it feels like something that happens when I notice judgment. That it's so easy to judge how my kids' teachers or how my family members or someone should be experiencing a pandemic or responding to it, or behaving in ways that I think they should be. And I find myself, maybe because it's a stressful time, having that default a little bit more and having to jump in and figure out how to reframe that a little bit more toward compassion.
Oh, that's a nice purr.
Good.
I think having multiple roles, right? I think most of us are members of a family or have a family in some way. And I think all of us are educators or have, you know, have work to tend to, in a way, like it gives you a different perspective. Yeah, than like when you're juggling multiple things, it's a new kind of frame on it.
I've appreciated what Ram Dass, who is a spiritual teacher who passed away recently, and he said, you know, if you think you've reached enlightenment, go spend time with your family. And I think like that, you know, sometimes it's like, you know, easy to practice compassion with strangers, and it's like for the ones closest to us, and even ourselves, the challenge of compassion. And so, what is, you know, I like that we distinguish it as an action, right? That is not just, oh, I'm thinking, but a real practice, an internal practice. And I think I've always wanted to raise a compassionate child, and then I realized I actually had to have a practice of compassion so that I might have the capacity to recognize it outside of myself. And I feel like particularly in our culture, we hold a lot of self-aggression. So if I cannot practice this way of being with myself, I should not expect that I can practice it with others, near and dear, but also to strangers.
that's come up for me, Michelle, like the need for self-compassion during this as well, right? So first of all, I guess I know people have said this before, but you know, kindness, empathy, love, and compassion are not things that we're going to ever run out of, right? There's not like a limit to the supply that I have. But sometimes it feels like in the time that we're living in, that I'm supposed to be giving or feeling, you know, this towards a lot of outside sources. But then I can also find myself, you know, that I need to be it for myself, you know, that, you know, Shannon, just like you mentioned, like thinking about how others, like, you know, the voice in my head, that self-talk can occur sometimes, and think about how am I handling this? How am I grieving? How am I feeling, right? And is that the way it's supposed to, or would it, you know, so that practice is real, right? Like in our lives every day.
Mhm. So here's a fun, this is a little bit of more of a personal note, a different, like a change that I noticed in myself. I hope that's okay that I shared that. Something um, that I feel this, that I've jumped off the hamster wheel a bit, right? Maybe onto a different hamster wheel, I'm not sure, but like, you know, having those multiple roles, you do just sort of get in your groove. But I've recently noticed that I have so much more compassion for my kids than and maybe um, less like feelings that come up like resentment or feeling really challenged by having those multiple roles and thinking like, you're keeping me from getting this done and now I can't get this done. And just seeing them in this new world where they have nothing, no control has given me like, so like, I feel like my heart is exploding for like, I just so much compassion for how they must feel, right? They don't know how to have a conversation on Zoom with their friends, and you know, that they're like just starving for connection from, you know, from their peers. And so I feel just in so many different ways, they are really losing out on stuff. And so I feel so many feelings for them. Also, they're the only people I see, so I can have feelings.
Well, you should get some coworkers like myself. And by coworkers, I mean cats. I've already had to fire them multiple times and then rehire them because I don't have any more anybody to talk to regularly that will listen. But I think, but what you bring up is actually something that resonated with this notion that perhaps actually compassion is re-seeing. You know, it is re-seeing a person or a stranger actually with their full kind of complexity and the challenges and everything that they have. And when you can, you know, you talked about your heart opening, it's like, oh, this, by slowing down, right? This is, I think, pretty amazing. Like what's really radical is like slowing down has allowed us to expand our skills and to re-see each other. And even those most familiar to us, because you're like, oh, that's right, you're a being experiencing this and you have fewer years on the planet. And so, yeah, there was something that what you said that made me feel like re-seeing is a component of compassion.
Well, and maybe seeing from a new angle too, because I feel like you were saying, the hamster wheel, yeah, that we get in our daily rhythms and routines, and this has all disrupted that. And having so many Zoom calls with similar people I would have talked to before, but just in a very different way, and we're all having different experiences and sharing them. And I just feel like people I would normally kind of run past and say hello, now all of a sudden there are so many new dimensions and complexities that I haven't seen before. And so on one hand, like Tina said, you can't run out of compassion. On the other hand, there's so many calls in a day and so many stories and so many really hard things that people are going through that at some point it feels hard to hold it all. and like you almost have to pull yourself away from compassion for a little bit so that you can refuel and come back to it with authenticity.
And
There's
that makes
actually, go ahead, Tina.
no, it just made me think like that still is compassion to me in some way, Shannon, because it's for you.
Mm.
You know, that taking care of you is an act of love and compassion as well too, right? When you said refuel and recharge, like when you do that, when you take care of yourself, you know, and do what you need to do, whether that's turning off the news or walking into the, you know, room and shutting the door, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
that when you're refueling, that you're going to show up again as Shannon, you know. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if that was.
No, it's helpful.
Yeah.
What are you all doing to refuel? Like I mean, whether it's shutting off or carving out time for yourself, like what is it that you're doing to stoke your own self-compassion?
I would like to answer that question, and I would, but right before that, I would note that there's actually a term for this, what you all described beforehand, and that is something called idiot compassion. It's like when we don't give authentically, when we're trying to do all these things and being of service, you know what I mean? That it's not true compassion, that sometimes it's a power over people, but it's not really operating from an authentic place. So there are degrees of, you know, there are kinds of compassion, and there are actually even ways that we're not doing it correctly, you know, that actually can cause harm to self and others. And to your point, like how are we individually practicing compassion? That's what this is where you get outed. Oh, practice. Ooh. I've been walking every day, and I'm not really just, and I've have a challenge with, started off with 2 other friends, and now it's grown to more folks, and it's walking alone and together. And it has a I'm wandering and loitering and wondering. And so I'm getting more earth screen time. And there's something about the kind of aimlessly walking with there's not, you know, I'm not on the New York corporate, you know, merger pace, you know. It is to linger and wander and be. And I feel like that has been a new practice and way of being that helps me then as I deal with things. I have more space to be with them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm spending more time in nature and I was meant to be a naturalist, just not in this lifetime, maybe next lifetime. But it's something I never really indulged, because when do you find time to do that, you know, amidst everything else? But we've kind of used up the games in our house, and I can't go anywhere. And, you know, you're just sort of forced to see your space a little bit more. So even literally, I was looking at the grass outside the door today. And it's so beautiful. And there were all these little purple flowers that were really tiny that were growing up between the blades. But that kind of noticing and appreciating and connecting with the space around us is something I love to do, but you really do have to jump off the wheel and be present to do it in a way that's very fulfilling. So I've been allowing myself some space for that lately.
Nice.
I'll echo. I'm going to go with the nature train here. So inspired by Michelle, I joined her on her walking alone and together. So thank you, Michelle, for that gift, because I too love nature. The Dalai Lama says the loving kindness is our religion, or loving kindness. Guys, help me out. Loving kindness.
I think that's it.
Okay. I didn't know if I was saying it right. Loving kindness is a religion. And I say, well, then nature is my church. Like when I'm outside, there's just something that is really healing for me. And so whatever I'm feeling, like just being out in nature, looking and noticing things just has a way of a healing power for me, and so I think, going on those walks, and then honestly, my mindfulness practice like has really helped me through this time of quarantining. It helps me all the time, but I have found it being a strong source for me during this time.
Awesome. I'm noticing.
Leah, how about you?
I'm noticing, again, back to my kids. I see them so much. How similar I am to them in that I have to move. Like if I don't move my body as fast as I can, and like really feel like the exertion, then I can't. Like the end of the day is when I feel the buildup. So preferably outside. I just like in nature in the woods. Or I live kind of close to the park, so it's that way. Just like getting out and moving has been the way I make it through the day. That's my way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I feel like who's baking, cooking, making bread.
I'm afraid of bread.
My Elena made homemade ciabatta yesterday.
Ooh.
Yeah, it turned out really good.
My sugar bear has been making bread, and she does gluten-free, and she has made her own sourdough starter. She made a like caraway olive bread, and she had the sourdough starter she carried from my house to her dad's house. She was feeding it and carrying it, and I was like, Sugar Bear, will you take care of me like that starter? So I'm hoping I've enriched, I at least get close to the starter status, but there's something about the attending to of something, right? And the giving and being of service. And, we're sitting down and having lots of meals together, and it's been great to do that. And I feel to be grateful for every meal, and to be grateful to know that there are strangers that have made my life possible. All beings that have made my life possible. And so that I think that's an opportunity for practice, is knowing all the beings that are doing things that allow for me to be at home. It is not, is it a privilege in many ways? It's a privilege, and some people don't. And so I just feel to always honor every meal with that kind of, to note that, and to be extra thankful of every being, the postman, the garbage man, the clerks, all the folks. I think that walking, living practice, and noticing all the folks that were perhaps invisible, to my way of understanding how my life has been supported.
Michelle, you mentioned the word radical a little bit earlier in the conversation. And I know it's not this conversation necessarily right now, but I can't help but also, because I know that this is something that is important, I think, to all four of us, right? But is the need for radical compassion, and thinking about how that kind of attitude might help us as we move forward and come out of where we are now, right? And that maybe it will hopefully move us as a society forward. I hope that people's compassion becomes transformational.
I only understand time now as BC before Corona, DC during Corona, and AC after Corona, and like just think about what practices we are doing right now in our families, in our particular circumstances, and how might we be disciplined in taking them AC, after Corona, that we still have meals and sit down, that we still slow down, that we still have compassion when the hamster wheel, hopefully we are not going back to a hamster wheel, but the running, how might we even have some compassion in our schedules.
Mhm. I wonder how we hold on to these lessons and define them, because I don't know what the return will look like, how fast or slow or gradual it will be. But I do hear a number of people say, I hope it's different on the other side. And I think, it's really going to take a lot more than hope for that. And that it feels like the first step is really to reflect on what it feels like right now, and pulling out the lessons from what is so beautiful right now, or what we hope we can hold on to actively work toward that. Because I really, I listened to that with sort of mixed emotions in response, because it's beautiful to think that, but I also think, how do we make sure we don't just jump back in and get back to the way of business? And if we ever had a few extra minutes to plan for that kind of radical change, it's now. What are the things we need to put into place so that we can actually make that a reality in any small way?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even the littlest things, right? Why don't we do this more? Like, I have friends from college, and I don't see them because we live in different parts of the country, but now we have a weekly Zoom call. Zoom was a thing before. Connecting with people has always been important, but when you're on that wheel and you forget that these people need you, or that you need them, really. So there's those little things that I wonder, how did I forget that I needed you? And now I do, and I hope I don't forget again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's, I'm coming back to the way compassion was described in the beginning about that it's a verb, it's an action. In the same way we think about hope, right? Because hope without action actually just creates the conditions for the very thing we fear to come to fruition. So how might we be hopeful with action? How might we be in action with compassion? And to take these practices AC, right? That actually we have a time, like we can actually take this with us.
And where is compassion for all that hopefulness? Because my hopes get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I think, how do I have compassion for myself that I'm not going to be able to do all those millions of things I imagine and hope for? And, how do you pair action and intention and radicalness with peace with what is?
Mm.
One day at a time, like we are now, right? Like that's, my husband emerges from his basement office every day. One day, I can only do it one more day, and I'm like, all right.
You've talked about this concept called the day. I don't know.
When time is a social construct, right? When you said that, Shannon, it made me think like of this saying, my life is my practice and my practice is my life, right? Like, Michelle, we've had that conversation. I know George Monfort, one of my teachers, says that often. And that's, that's all I can do. Wait, Michelle, I'm going to give Michelle another shout out, right? that is enough. Right. And when you talked about hope, I think hope needs a plan, right, to make it actionable. And, the four of us, thanks for everybody else that's listening in on our conversation. But, I think I feel like held in this community of people that are committed to the work that we're doing. And I look forward to collaborating on plans with all of you as far as how we move forward out of this.
We have to remember that we were enamored by a small flower and the grass, that we got a chance to move. For us, this is a time perhaps of discernment to, to weed out the things that really have been unnecessary, but we've just been running, to notice that, as Leah was saying, that connection is important, but how haven't we talked to the people that we wanted to talk to? Because it's like, I'm busy, I don't have time to talk to you. It's like, when am I making time? It's like, oh, now we have time. And but we can allow this to be part of our practice, a regular time to connect, to actually not schedule ourselves every hour, and maybe hours won't exist after Corona, but that we leave space to walk, to wonder, to, amble, to cook.
To be grateful to the people that serve us, the people who we depend upon, but we don't know it, we don't see them. I think that's such, don't want to forget that. That's such an thing.
And advocate for those doing a service, to have the essential basic needs met in society: healthcare, education, love, food.
There's work to be done.
It's a big one.
It's a big one.
Well, I wouldn't want to be in it with anybody else.
I know. I'm like, squat up.
Sounds like we could practice together.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you, Tina, for your big heart and dreaming us here.
Oh my gosh, I'm honored and like just to be with you anytime that I spend with you guys, whether it's here or whether it's. I said to Michelle, I look forward to when we can actually sit at a table and break bread again. One of my favorite things to do is to cook a meal for people that I care about, and so when we're out of this, I hope all 4 of you will join me at my table for some bread and some pasta and whatever else you want, I'll make you. Okay.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah.
Awesome. And you might be having to cook and be hugged at the same time. We like.
I
We
can't
will hug
wait.
together.
I miss hugs so much. I can't even tell you.
I know.
But it's okay. That's for a greater good right now, right?
Yep.
The greater good. All right, everybody. I think we had a great conversation, and I'll see you on the other side of the call.
Yes.
Virtual hugs.
Right.
Beautiful.
Peace,
Hugs.
peace and love.
Peace and love.